I'm going to just start it off with the hot take right out of the gate. I don't know if I've ever seen someone have such a great match and such a bad promo on one show. Like, they could not be further apart from one another. I thought his segment with MJF, I thought Kenny, like, this is like a fine, hey, we're going to wrestle on Collision promo, not we're going to headline the next pay-per-view together. I just thought it was Kenny in his, like, sarcastic, bad joke delivery that I find sometimes he just gets caught in, and I was not a big fan of that promo. But the match was great.
I mean, I don't know if there's a different Kenny to that Kenny, though. That's just kind of who he is.
The guy has cut very good promos. Now, they're usually in Japan, but he has cut very good promos. I just found it was just a very... I mean, we're coming off some of these segments with, like, Roman and Punk, and that's my direct comparison. And I just felt like that setup to this pay-per-view, it could not be further from building up.
I don't want to break down the segment before we break down the segment, but like...
Just kidding, everyone.
How much comedy did you take offense to in the promo? Like,
I just thought it was just Kenny that was just, like, he was just trying to be so witty to MJF, and he's just making all these, like...
Well, like what? The excuse my smell, I just had a match. What's your excuse?
I mean, that was the start of it. And then you call yourself the devil.
That wasn't so much comedy. That was like...
I agree. It was not comedy. I don't know what it was intended to be.
It was an attempt to frame the match as the devil versus the god of pro wrestling.
Yeah, it was just...
Which is like a poster tagline.
Okay, we'll get to it shortly. But we're starting off with Omega and Swerve Strickland. Tony Schiavone stating unprecedented stakes for a wrestling match. Unprecedented.
I mean, they've done EVP. Wait, have they? I guess they haven't, right? Because we are reminded that
you could lose your EVP status, but not putting the EVP status on the winner. I guess
there has never been a number one contender versus EVP match before in the history of AEW or possibly pro wrestling.
Yes, it's wringing all the water out of that unprecedented towel, but Tony Schiavone managed it. So we start off, and early on, Swerve is placed on a chair on the floor, and Omega hits a V-trigger, and then one to the back of the head inside of the ring, and he's going for an avalanche, one-winged angel, which Swerve was able to avoid. And as Omega proceeds with snapdragons, Taz starts breaking down the technique and admits he catches himself. I know I'm really getting in the weeds here. I was like, no, keep going, Taz. We're enjoying this. And then he tries for one on the edge of the apron, but Swerve grabs hold of Aubrey Edwards and kicks Kenny low. And Schiavone, Aubrey's being very lenient here. Like, yeah, he just like grabbed the referee here to set up a low blow spot. But playoff season is beginning. And then they get on top of the guardrail and they lose balance and they have to reset as Swerve hits a pile driver, follows with a Swerve stomp, then goes for another into the ring, and it's Swerve pointing the handgun at Omega's head. And Omega catches him with a knee, lands the V-trigger, and we get a battle back and forth of one-winged angel versus Vertebreaker, ending with the Vertebreaker being hit, but Omega gets the shoulder up, moves out of the way of another Swerve stomp, and this time V-trigger finally on the third try gets him up for the one-winged angel and beats Swerve in 20 minutes, 34 seconds to become the number one contender. And still the executive vice president of AEW.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
Which, again, I don't know if we've ever seen Kenny exercise those powers in any way. We have no idea what he's actually in charge of, but
maybe he could overrule the no physicality clause for next week's contract signing. Does he have that power at least?
I don't. I think if he was the Bucks, he would, but as Kenny Omega, who's, I guess, much more law-abiding, he probably would not do that.
That's the next storyline. What do you do, Kenny, in this role? What is it that you
Number one
do?
contender versus you tell us what you do as an EVP.
Yeah, right. Number one contender versus FAQ.
That's it.
Do you have an office?
This was, I thought, a very good match, of course. It's Swerve and it's Kenny Omega. Very good athleticism, very good action. I will say, to me, unprecedentedness of the stipulation aside, I do feel like of course, there's a higher level that I would expect these two to get to if this was a pay-per-view. For a a TV match. It was I would say above the standard of an AEW, even high level TV match. But the booking to me made it seem like they only made Swerve number one contender just to jump Kenny in front of the line for a title shot at the pay-per-view. Would you suggest? Because the last time Kenny had a singles match, he lost to Andrade, and certainly hasn't racked up the number of wins that, either like Kyle Fletcher or who else was it? Darby Allen has this year. So this felt like just maybe their way of fast tracking Kenny to a title shot.
Yeah, I mean, you've got sort of the, they're now even at 1 win apiece. That by AEW standards, they can probably go to this in like 2.5 years, and they will reference the March 25th, 2026 edition of Dynamite, the last time that they met. It's.
What'd you think of the match?
I like the match a lot. I didn't think it was. I didn't think it surpassed their last TV match that I think was above this one as well. Perhaps part of that, like I don't know how much it's very predictable that they would have started the show with this, but it almost felt like the crowd was like almost expecting like this was going to be the big main event, and they were getting it right away for it as well. So I mean, I thought it was very, very strong overall, but I thought the segment with Max was the more important one of like making this feel like a big title match for Dynasty, which, I mean, this is going to be, it's going to be a very high standard of match that those two have to achieve.
Which made sense why they put this ahead. So, number one, because you're getting the most viewers of the entire show at the beginning anyway, but also so that you could do the rest of your Kenny, funny comedy lines
stand
later on in the show.
For St. Paul. Yes. I mean, on Dynamite, like the main event slot is the opening, basically. It's like the quote unquote main event at the end of the show is usually your number 2 match of the night. MJF kicks off the second hour, mocks the Minnesotans with their accent, and he is the man who hanged the hangman, the man who will never, ever, ever, ever be world champion again, and says how Paige didn't even put up much of a fight. It was the easiest match of my career. And then he just goes into full rock mode here, stating that no one is on the level of the devil. And that prompts Kenny Omega to come down and enters the ring as they cite their previous match when these two had a showdown on an episode of Collision 2.5 years ago. And now it is time for the rematch. And Omega says that, pardon me for my attire and my smell. I just had a match. What's your excuse? Right out of the old My Way video package for Mania 17. I remember this line.
Well, Steve Austin would have to say
smell
something.
what you're reeking of, Steve.
Okay.
We were not getting off to a great start here, but he then explains how, with all of his nicknames, even at the height of my bad guyness, I never called myself a god. And you call yourself a devil. You place yourself on a pedestal. And if that's what it takes to beat the devil, then I will be a god, the god of professional wrestling. And when they told me a few years ago to take time off, I didn't listen because I felt a duty to the fans. And I was 60 to 80% when I lost to you last time. And I learned a lesson losing to Swerve, that it's all about what happens around the ring, back there. I don't know what back there means for the EVP, but he's now learning the political game in this industry that he has occupied for a couple decades. But no more bullshit hijinks from MJF, he declares, and says, let's find out who the better man is at Dynasty. As he puts out his hand, MJF is just sweating away here in the corner, and I think some of his bronzer was falling onto the mat, and he agrees to the match, but turns down the handshake and just walks out and leaves.
So I felt this was like a relatively pedestrian standard sort of face-to-face segment. I guess even in the recap, I didn't really have any sort of like guttural, even negative reaction to it. I thought it was perfectly
My pushback
fine.
was more so on just the demeanor of Kenny Omega and just all of his delivery of this. It just felt like a guy that was just like trying to perform and get like a kick out of everybody as he was doing this. I just didn't take it. It to me was just like a not serious Kenny Omega. That was my problem with the segment. Maybe I'm alone.
I guess I didn't take that away from Kenny. Like, this felt like Kenny, babyface Kenny, as usual. It gets the visual out there of seeing these two face to face. You know, they likely want to announce the card as soon as, or the headliner as soon as possible. Kenny Omega wrestling in the main event of a pay per view in Canada, Western Canada at that. You know, I think is a big deal. And I think it's a big test for Kenny. It's his first singles pay-per-view match since Okada at All In. Mm-hmm. And I would argue, like, he says it in character. I have to imagine it might be the case in real life. Like, he could be healthier. I would imagine. I would hope he's healthier now than he was back then. And he seems to be in very good shape from these appearances. So I feel like there's a different level of expectation for Kenny this time around. And of course, he's going up against MJF, who's one of the very best. So it's, to me, our chance to see where he's truly at, perhaps.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, you have the segment next week. They're doing the contract signing next week in Winnipeg, and then you only have like one more week, and then it's the pay-per-view. It's not like they have an extended period to build this one up. It's like right around the corner. And
thus the need for a segment like this on the same show that he earned the
I think you had to come out of this show. And we have like the top 3 matches now for the show with FTR against Copeland and Cage, Osprey and Moxley, and then this is your top 3 matches. The Post Wrestling Cafe is your one-stop shop for all of the coverage that Post Wrestling has to offer. 2 big rewind-aways this month with WWF Insurrection from May of 2002. This UK-only pay-per-view featured the Raw brand going overseas and ending with the infamous plane ride from hell. Then we're going to take a look at AWA's Super Sunday from April of 1983. A new edition of Talk Can Be Yours, plus MCU Later, Book Club, and coverage of UFC 326, TNA Sacrifice, and of course, XL editions of Rewind a Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown with all the news of the day. Join now at postwrestlingcafe.com.